Hello, and welcome to another Scoutcast. You are joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined by the ever-present Joe. How is it going, Joe?
It's going well. It's going well. Really, really excited about this Scoutcast. Got lots to chat about as we look ahead to the weeks. I was saying before we came on out for the captaincy video next week. I was talking to Tom, and we're especially looking forward to that because we've got some other options apart from Haaland to chat about.
Yeah, it should be quite nice. And we're also joined by the evergreen Rich. How's it going, Rich?
Well, not everything's green.
Oh no,
my arrow, for example. I'm looking forward to moving on to the next game week swiftly.
Oh, mate. Yeah, I know. So for all those that listen on the pod, we've got a green arrow next to my name, a green arrow next to Joe's name, and a red arrow next to Rich's. But we've been on this so many times. We know that even though you have a green this week, it can very easily be a red next week. Before we go on to what we're talking about, I know we've had there's been lots of chats recently on Twitter and things. I can't remember whether it was today or yesterday where it was World Mental Health Day. And I know, Joe, you put out a tweet on Twitter as well saying about World Mental Health Day. They got a massive reaction because people were, in terms of talking about mental health and things like that, it's so massive. And I think it's good just to very, very quickly, just for 30 seconds, just say about, what we think about it all, because three men on a stream, lots of blokes probably in the chat as well talking about it. They might not chat with each other. It's such a good thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the good things about the World Mental Health Awareness Day is the amount of people, especially in the FPL community on Twitter, was sharing their own experiences of either mental health challenges they faced and also things like counselling. So in my case, because after my stroke, I was having sort of PTSD, really, as a lot of people have with this kind of trauma, but it's not like people would think of something like that as something like PTSD, like people in war get. So for me, it was something I didn't feel I needed help with, but I really did. And so I was just explaining about my experience of having counselling recently and how useful it's been to me. Yeah. And it was really good. It's really opened up loads of other people. I think Az put up a post as well. And lots of other people in the FPL community were sharing their own tales of that. And the ultimate aim really is to get people to talk about it and sort of end the stigma around mental health, really, because it's woefully underfunded compared to physical health.
It is big time, and like you said, it's just a few people posting little things like that, which just raises awareness and lets people know that it's okay, just to talk about it. And Flappy, I know I've called you Flappy then, Rich. As well. In FPL, people get affected by things a little bit with FPL as well, don't they?
They do. But it was nice seeing stories like. I mean, obviously, it's not a nice story, but to hear about how Joe's, it
was a nice story. Optimistic in the end.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's positive. And people sharing experiences like that. So, I saw a lot of them yesterday on Twitter. So obviously, that a campaign to talk about it more, it's working. Exactly. Outside of FPL and within as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and best thing we could ever say is join groups like Scout, go on Twitter, join group chats and things like that, and just chat things out with people, because it's always the best thing to do. And sometimes it's actually easier to do it with somebody you've never even met before, but in other ways it's also easier to do it with people that you do know. So no matter what, make sure you're chatting.
I'm just going to say, it's that old adage, especially with Twitter as well. Twitter's where you where you tell the truth to strangers, and Facebook is where you lie to your friends.
Exactly. It's true. It's so true. Joe, let's move on to Game Week 11 then. What is coming up on the show?
Oh, right, Joe. We're going to look back at our mixed fortunes in Game Week 10. I have a look at the most improved players this season and those whose stats have nosedived, with a bit of help from Yordi, who was on our Meet the Manager series recently. He came up with some good names for me to look at. Rich is bargain basement shopping for some enablers with an eye on Game Week 12, especially when City and Arsenal blank. So those cheap lads will be needed. Andy, you're going strategic. You're looking at how Game Week 12 fits into our plans for the rest of the season, and some help from the season ticket and Rate My Team prediction model, Fantasy Football Scout as well. So we're going to catch up with the community team, reveal our Game Week 11 teams. Your Q&A will round off proceedings. And just before I hand over to Andy, just some news about next week because of the midweek games. Because you're amateurs, you two, you're unable to join us. You've got proper jobs during the day. I don't. This is it. I'm going to be joined by Karen for a deadline special at 5:30 on next Tuesday. So we'll be taking everyone into that game week of Game Week 12, and we'll have a look ahead to Game Week 13 as well. So that's how we'll cover that off as well. So there'll be some more changes to schedule. Do subscribe, and you'll get you'll keep up to date with all of that then.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, I'll be rewatching that. Don't you worry. Right. So moving on to the points then. So my points this week, 74 for me this week. I had a green arrow of about 14k, so I'm up to 51k now, which I will take every day of the week. Pope in goal for 2, Cancelo with 18, Trippier with 7, James with 1, Zuma with 2, Bowen with 7, Martinelli with 12, Zaha with 5, Maddison with 1, Haaland captain with 12, as captain, obviously, and Kane with 7. Andreas Pereira points kind of rooted on the bench there, but to be honest, there was no way I was going to get them because I played Zuma over Mitrovic. Zuma didn't come in for Mitrovic. I benched Mitrovic on purpose. So, yeah, I was fairly happy with his game week. 74 points. I think keeping Martinelli was nice. Maddison was a bit annoying, obviously, but then he did the business last week anyway. Zaha got his assist. Bowen got me the penalty, which was lovely seeing him on the penalties as well. So yeah, the only thing that annoyed me a bit was I brought in Zaha for James Ward-Prowse, which is obviously absolutely fine, but I brought in James and he was benched, and I did not see that coming at all. Like, I understand that they're going to be trying to bring out a strong lineup for AC Milan midweek, but I just didn't see it coming that he was going to be benched this week. So I think a lot of people brought him in, and a lot of people were a bit annoyed with that, with the mass rotation that Chelsea made. But 74 points, 51k, I can't complain really. Very, very happy with that. Joe, moving on to yours. Talk us through your points this week, my friend.
Yes, 70 points and a green arrow. My disappointment was putting Nico Williams on first on my bench. So he came in for Mitrovic for his 1 point, and Andreas's 6 points are rooted to the bench. It's actually only 5 points, but that difference would have been about 60k. So I'm currently 270k, and I would have been just over 200k with that. So that was a big difference there. So I had Pope in goal, Cancelo, Trippier points, James and Nico Williams 1 point, Nico Williams, and then Maddison 1 point as well. Zaha with assists, De Bruyne, Martinelli's points. So that was great. And then Haaland, everyone's got him. 201% effective ownership. So a marginal loss there. He's in my rank as well, because on live FPL they have the top 10k effective ownership, and I was looking at that, and it was 201 and percent, and I thought, mine, I'm like, just under 300k that time. Mine will be less. It was more. More people where I am in the rankings were captaining Haaland, only marginally. And Tony got me 5 points as well, which is great. So I can't complain. Lots of green arrow, and loads of players scored points. Not loads, but it was reasonably happy.
Lovely. And then Rich, talk us through your team this week. Rich, this sounds horrible, but just talk us through your team.
Second week in a row that I'm bottom. Yeah, it was nice that Joe mentioned Tony, because he wiped out with that penalty. He wiped out 3 of my clean sheets for Pope, Botman, and Trippier. So in 3 weeks, I've not had a clean sheet. Actually, that's a lie. I got a Trippier clean sheet, who everyone owns, last week. Out of those other 9 over the last 3 weeks, I've got no clean sheets. So that was wiped out by a slightly controversial penalty, perhaps, and we knew that Tony was not going to miss the penalty. I started Reece James. They got a clean sheet, but Reece James didn't start the game. Perisic, again, Tottenham got a clean sheet. Perisic didn't start the game. Both were predicted to start. I got Andreas off the bench for Mitrovic with 6 points. He was my only sub that actually played. Martinelli got 12. Salah got 2. He had a very similar penalty shout to the one that Tony was given. So I didn't get a penalty there. Then Zaha was my transfer in. He got 5 points with that assist. So that was good. However, I'd sold, and I said last week that I wouldn't sell Saka. And I sold Saka for Zaha. So that cost me 10 points. Haaland captain. I'd forgotten until Joe mentioned it that he was over 200% effective ownership anyway, so that doesn't matter. And Kane with 7. So yeah, 57 points in total. Transfer cost me 10. I mean, I still quite like my team. I mean, I could have had 5 clean sheets there if penalties didn't exist and if James and Perisic started, but clutching at straws. And maybe I should be grateful Andreas came off the bench.
I suppose the big one as well was no Cancelo, wasn't it? He was the big player that hauled massively. But then you look at the past couple of weeks, like we've mentioned it on the stream a couple of times, is he worth the money, and all this kind of stuff. And it was looking quite good. And then obviously he's got a haul in him every now and again, doesn't he?
Well, and actually, so with Cancelo, I didn't really want to lose him on wildcard, but it just made sense for what my plan was. And until this week, I was actually a point up on it because I had Patterson, who got me 6, and Botman got me 5. So that's 11. And I think Cancelo got 9-pointer and a 1-pointer the last 2 weeks. Yeah. So, but obviously he's punished me big time, all in 1 week. And it's like 77% EO.
Ugh. Disgusting.
Yeah,
it's all right,
I mean, yeah, and it's funny because all these, like the reason I had a bad week last week was because all these £8 million midfielders have been doing well, apart from my one, which was Saka. And then finally that happens, but I sold him, and there was a lot of reasons I did it. I couldn't find many reasons to keep him in the end because I needed the money to upgrade Patterson. Zaha was going to rise in price. He was quite low owned as well. Like no one was buying Saka. The only reason I could think to keep Saka was because I quite like him.
And definitely on pens now by looks of things as well.
Definitely on pens. Yeah,
Martinelli was on the pitch. That's what we were waiting for, I think.
Yeah, and that was a part of it as well, because I know I talked about pens a lot last week. Zaha was definitely on pens. Saka was probably. So that was another reason.
Yeah, it's unlucky. I mean, I'm assuming you are going to keep coming on the Scoutcast because since you have, it's not been going well, has it?
It's not.
Yeah,
I could see a way I could have had a good game week. I mean, one of them would be if I wasn't allowed to do transfers.
Yeah, something to be said for that, maybe, I guess. But I think in hindsight, I mean, you were talking about the move last week, and I said Saka to Zaha makes a lot of sense, and obviously it's not how it turned out, but still plenty of time left, mate, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I've got the money in the bank now to do another transfer.
Yeah, and a nice little segue. We're now going to go on to the most improved section with Joe, which is exactly what Rich is hoping to do moving forward. So, most improved players based on their non-penalty XGI per 90, Joe. This is based on last year and this year so far, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're comparing this year to last year. I've got the list of names from Yordi, who has been on the Meet the Manager. He's a familiar name in the community as well, into stats as well. He's also a former professional footballer as well. He for those on the Meet the Manager series, we can find out more about how he got sacked for turning up to a Spurs game. And that's an interesting anecdote he's got there, but which he's quite happy about. Looking at this list here, there's some caveats here. Wilson and Rodrigo, they really haven't played that much because of injury. So there's quite a small sample there. So that's why there's quite a big difference there. So this is looking at the difference in non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 last year and this year so far. Wilson, 0.34 last season, 0.86 is absolutely huge this season. So if he can stay fit, big if. Almiron is perhaps, that's why I've highlighted Almiron, is perhaps more interesting because he's less Wilson. But 0.16, absolute disaster last season. This season, 0.48. So getting towards that sort of magic 50 mark, 0.5 mark in these stats. That looks pretty good. Rodrigo, who's spoken about there, is obviously done well. Gross, obviously his stats have tailed off a bit now. So this is all of this season, was 0.3 non-penalty XGI per 90 last season, 0.51 this season. Trippier is interesting, so I've highlighted him. So another Newcastle player, and 0.15, absolutely disastrous last season, 0.28. So he's pretty much doubled his expected goal involvement. And as if we need to be reminded, he's a defender who is posting a very good expected goal involvement. That's absolutely gold dust in FPL. We've got Solly March, another hugely improved player, 0.21 non-penalty XGI per 90 last season, 0.34. Trossard, another 0.38, 0.48 this season. Xhaka, sorry, I should say. We've all can see him on the pitch, but we can see it in the stats. 0.15 expected goal involvement, 0.25 this season. So marginally up there. Xhaka, another one. And I'll put that out. I mean, he's just getting the game time as well. But this is per 90. But he's obviously taking those chances. We saw what he was doing in Europe. He's doing similar this season. And so Xhaka was a player that was being mentioned a couple of times already on the Scoutcast recently. 0.38 expected goal involvement per 90 last season. 0.47. So getting towards that really higher echelons of like a very good player. Zaha, he's marginally up as well. And Eze, another who is doing well, he's marginally up, and Rashford is marginally up as well. We would probably expect that because a player like Rashford at Manchester United, you wouldn't expect them to be like they were last season again, and obviously we could seeing that improvement. So looking at all of that, I mean, Newcastle, Brighton, we're seeing in the stats with the players how improved they are. We're also seeing the chances that Xhaka is getting because Vardy is getting older as well. But I mean, looking at this list, who appeals? Who do you think is going to maintain this improvement, and who's going to drop off? So I mean, we'll go with you, Rich, first. Who appeals in this list? Who have you got your eye on getting in even?
I mean, it's impressive looking at Zaha. Obviously, we've just talked about him and we talked about my transfer, but especially because this is non-penalty XGI as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
and I thought of him as, you know, a lot of his goals have been penalties.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Zaha stands out massively.
Yeah.
Xhaka's a weird one because I think if Arsenal players, I think we're going to be looking at getting 3 Arsenal players back in, you know, when we move to, well, after the blank game week. But I feel like he's a bit too low, as in 0.25. I don't think it's good enough if you're going to be looking at players like Saka, Martinelli, the defenders, Jesus. So while he's impressive, probably wouldn't consider him. And he's a really, really good price, isn't he?
Yeah, I've highlighted the players for me there that are of most interest. So Trossard and Zaha as those sort of cheaper midfielders. But then it's those Newcastle lads and Wilson. I would have highlighted him, but I just can't. I don't know when he's going to get injured. But Almiron, I don't know. I mean, I'd love if Almiron's going to keep doing this. I mean, 5.1 million. That's amazing value, and he's posting really good stats, underlying stats, and huge improvement. And Trippier as well. But Andy, what do you think of this list of improved players?
Yeah, I think it's hard to ignore Wilson's non-penalty XGI per 90 being 0.86. Like that is pretty incredible, really. Especially, you know, it's pretty much double everybody else on that list.
It's a small sample though, so you would expect him.
Yeah, and obviously the big thing this year is he's got that competition, hasn't he, with like Isak? So is he playing better because he's got that competition a little bit as well? So I think that's a big one. Trossard being up there is, you know, lovely to see as well, because I know a lot of people are thinking about him for the blank game week too. Somebody I did want to ask both of you about, and I know a few people have asked about in the chat as well. We've spoken about Zaha a lot. Rich has already said what I was going to say, which was how impressive his stats are non-penalty XGI, let alone the fact he's also on pens. And I think that's a really good indicator of what a good asset he is. But the player just below him, which is Eze, 5.5 million, and his non-penalty XGA per 90 is 0.27, which is obviously not as good as Zaha, because Zaha's playing up top and he's kind of the talisman as well. But, you know, for 5.5 million, he did quite well this weekend as well. Any thoughts on Eze, Joe?
No. Well, regarding other Palace assets apart from Zaha, he's already in my side. But other players, I mean, Edouard was someone I mentioned last week. You poo-pooed him. You poo-pooed my Edouard. Then he ruined that poo-poo by scoring. And we're going to speak about him and some other Palace assets a bit later when Rich takes us bargain basement shopping. So I won't go on about that now. I mean, I'm impressed with Palace, Brighton, and Newcastle at the moment for cheap assets, and that's what you do every season with FPL. You look for those cheap assets. I mean that great season where Leicester won it, all their assets really cheap. Mahrez was 5.5, and he ended up winning the Premier League. Last season, Arsenal were really cheap. This season, Arsenal is still really cheap for some reason. So thanks pricing gods for that. And that's what you're after. And Manchester United, I think, I think as the season goes on, I want to see more Manchester United players in this because they're quite cheap because they had such an awful season last season.
Yeah. So, Rich, a bit of a sneak peek on Eze. What do you think about him as well?
So I'm quite biased because I support Reading, as some people might know. Yeah, Elise. And I was desperately trying to find some news on Jordan Ayew because on SofaScore it was showing that he went off with an injury. Mm-hmm. I found a very few accounts that reported on it. So I don't actually know if Ayew's injured. But if he is, then Elise might be more nailed. Elise might be playing on the right as well. So I think, because I have had this thought cross my mind, like if I wanted to double up on the Palace attack, and I mean, I've probably got bigger priorities to do. I think Elise would be tempting. He's the same price. Or is he the same price as? So Elise is 5.4. So I think he'd be very, very tempting. And maybe if I was having a better season, I'd give myself that luxury and look at Elise. I think he's one to monitor, and I know he's not on this list. Eze doesn't really appeal to me, to be honest. I think he can play so many different positions because he's such a talented player.
And I suppose if we got Zaha, we're not really looking for that double up, are we?
I don't know. I always kind of like that double, as in, if everyone goes for Zaha, and maybe people won't, then I'll start thinking about that second piece.
I still think Zaha's quite low owned. Outside of the Twitter sphere, he's actually still a good differential for people who haven't got him.
It's really surprising. Like I thought that about Bowen. Bowen scored this weekend, and his ownership is still ridiculously low. And I was looking at, I think in terms of how much it affected my rank, he was my biggest point scorer this week, basically. So he is. It's massive when you think about overall ownership.
It's true, but then you look at Jesus' ownership, and that's still really high.
That's still he was the biggest dent to my rank this week. So I mean, he's nearly 60% owned, and if he's scoring every week, well, he obviously can't in Gameweek 12, but if he's scoring this weekend, he's got Leeds.
Exactly. Well, Joe, we're going to bring up now the biggest drop-offs so far this season.
Okay, so one caveat here. This was before the Villa and Forest game. So Coutinho's drop-off is probably sharper after that. I think this, I'll for the benefit of those listening to the podcast, I'll go through the names in a sec, but it really shows Liverpool's drop-off this season. Son, to an extent, only in the fact that he was almost superhuman last season. And as well as Mount was very good last season. Cancelo's on this list, and I expect to see some improvement there. So I don't expect him to be on the biggest drop-offs for long. But nevertheless, here we go. Mount has got the biggest drop-off. He was 0.51 non-penalty XGI per 90. That's really good last season. And he's 0.31 this season. So it's still pretty good, but not as good. Cancelo is quite a stark drop-off, but I think that's because obviously this is the season so far, and he's just come off the back of 18 points. So people are going to look at this and thinking your figures are wrong, but this is the whole season as it is. Yesterday was just one. This weekend was just one game. So it was 0.33 non-penalty XGI per 90 last season, 0.13, which is the lowest on this list this season. But I expect that to improve. Alexander-Arnold, what a drop off that is. So 0.5 last season, 0.31 this season in terms of non-penalty XGI per 90. Coutinho, 0.4 last season. So he was quite good last season, pretty good. 0.25, just a huge drop off. Son, 0.61 last season. That's all edging towards Haaland territory, but 0.46. So he's just merely excellent this season. Last season he was superhuman excellent. And Diaz at Liverpool, which is part of that Liverpool decline I was talking about, 0.53 was amazing in terms of non-penalty XGI per 90. And he's 0.38. Just with these figures here, basically 0.5 is your benchmarks are really, really good. And anything sort of just below that is still really good. Anything just above that is amazing. So for Diaz to now be 0.38, it's still quite good, but not as good as he was last season. So, I mean, it just shows that drop off there. But I guess it's telling us in stat form what we already know. Liverpool worse. Son couldn't do that, consistently for a whole other season. That's what it's looking at. But I don't know what this indicates to you, really. I mean, is it a worry seeing Cancelo in there after 18 points?
Well, Cancelo wasn't the one I was going to ask about, actually. I was going to ask Rich about Trent, because Trent's obviously had that big drop-off there. But for people that have Trent, obviously he's got the game in the blank. Is he still a priority sell? Because he's obviously, if he's injured, obviously he is. But this isn't good, is it? Like, they're not keeping clean sheets, and he's not even getting the attacker returns. But he does play in the blank. So what's your take on him at the moment?
So I saw an article earlier, and I must admit I didn't actually click on it. So take a pinch of salt. But the clickbait headline was that they expect Trent to be out for 2 weeks. Okay. I think we already know Diaz is out till after the World Cup. Yeah. So if he's injured, I think he's an easy sell. I guess the question is, who do you sell for? Now, I guess if someone didn't have Cancelo, I know most people do. I wouldn't go for Cancelo. And I know it might sound stubborn, but obviously with the Liverpool game, then a blank. I mean, I'd probably still go for someone like James. Yeah. You know, if you were going to sell Trent, because I don't see the point. If he is out for 2 weeks, and I guess I'd wait for the press conferences to confirm it, I think he'd be an easy sell, because I don't think he's someone people would be buying now anyway. Yeah. And I've been quite high on going for Liverpool players, and I think even I would, not hesitate to sell if he's even missing a game.
Yeah, it's so tough, isn't it? Like, with someone like Cancelo, like, I think it's just because he's also playing for the best team, isn't he, in the league, and obviously he's keeping the clean sheets, and he is the most nailed player in their back four, isn't he? So it's tough. I mean, Joe, obviously we've already got Cancelo anyway, but Son's the other one in there. A lot of people are thinking about going with someone like Son instead of going with someone like Salah in the blank game week. And I know we're going to talk about the blank game week a little bit later anyway, but Son, for me, apart from that game against Leicester, even since then, for me, he's not doing what he was last year, is he?
No, he's not. But I don't think it's necessarily him dropping form. It's just they've got other options. They've got Richarlison there. The points and the goals, the goal involvement can be shared around. And so I don't think Son is needed to that same extent. But 0.46 for his non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 this season is still really good. And I think we're going to see some more games in as a replacement and captaining him. It's not a bad shout, I don't think. That's something I'm definitely considering. If I didn't love Trossard so much, but I'm definitely considering that. And also with Cancelo, see, I want to see what extent the dynamics have changed, because I know Luke always talks about this when he's predicting very effectively the Man City lineups. He's always talking about the sort of balance, and if you've got this player here, you can't have that player there, and the way it is with Cancelo plays everywhere, plays each game. He sometimes plays on the right, sometimes on the left, but he one of the things that's intriguing with him is it depends on the other players playing as well. So with Walker being out, has that made him a more attacking because of the dynamics of the other players? I don't know yet. I need to see more games. But in the meantime, my plan last week was, I want to get Foden, De Bruyne and Haaland long term. Now I'm a bit more realistic, and obviously it's better for the budget. Cancelo, Foden and Haaland might be more optimal. So yeah, Cancelo's going nowhere for me. Staying on the bench game week 12. And I take this particular drop off with a pinch of salt, because he still looks pretty amazing to me, and he's just got me 18 points, so it's pretty hard to slag him off.
And Rich, somebody that's not on this list is Salah, and obviously we're all talking. You've already got Salah. My plan was always to get Salah for the blank. I'm starting to think that I might not get Salah for the blank now, but look at this list. He's not on this list. He hasn't dropped off massively from last year, and his stats were pretty good last year. So is it just, you shouldn't be thinking about it. You should just be getting him for that blank game week.
It's interesting because what Joe's just described about with Cancelo, like if I had Cancelo, I'd keep. I wouldn't even consider selling. But if you don't have him, I don't think you'll buy. I think Salah's the same. As in, funnily enough, I've got Salah. I'm happy to keep. I'm going to keep. I'm going to captain in 12. I'm going to cap. Not going to. Oh, well, I don't know if I captain in 13. I think that's the Forest game. Yeah. But I'll definitely keep him for that. So I'm going to be keeping him. But if I didn't have him, I don't know if I'd go for it. It really does depend on your team. if I could get him in easily for game week 12, I think I probably would. Like KDB, like Joe just mentioned, with you could do KDB to Son. And I know from speaking to Joe earlier, then Joe looking at maybe Son to Foden. Maybe you could do that kind of thing with Salah. With the option of if Salah does really well in game week 11 or 12, you could then keep Salah, ongoing, because they do have really good fixtures in 12. But I wouldn't do something crazy. I mean, I wouldn't be, because I think people, if Salah was in incredible form, he was putting up huge numbers, and his numbers aren't bad, people would be doing silly things to get him. People would be doing massive hits. People would be coming off Haaland for a week and buying him back.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be going to those lengths. But as an owner, I am happy. Well, I'm not happy, but I'm willing to ride along and see what happens. And
what
I think
an advert. As a Salah owner, I'm happy. Well, I'm not happy, but
he says frowning. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, it's just interesting to see those drop-offs, because obviously what we're seeing is those players that have obviously been their price has been hiked up because they did so well last year, and now they haven't done so well, and it's expensive to own them. It's not like we said, Joe's already mentioned about Arsenal players, they're still so cheap, so we're all just going to go straight to them after the blank, aren't we? Whereas these players we're thinking about potentially for the blank as well, like Trent and Son, but it still feels like a gamble, because you're investing that much money in that player, and you do have to, like Rich has already mentioned, maybe take a hit to get them in or move funds around. And Joe, you've already mentioned maybe Son in that blank. I don't think I'm that fussed by it at all.
Well, no. I mean, my top priority would probably be Trossard, because Trossard's against Nottingham Forest, and I think that's captain shout. Son is against Manchester United, which is captain shout, but not to a lesser extent, I think. And I've also got Maddison in my team. And I think as we'll talk about with your strategy chat, I think Maddison is pretty good as a captain option as well. Then, so there are other options, and that means we don't need Salah. And that means, so if you don't, as Rich said, if you don't have him, you don't need to get him in. There's certainly no FOMO about his effective ownership. I mean, he's nowhere near it.
If you say you were going to do KDB to Trossard, but you could do KDB to Salah, would you go for Trossard over Salah if you had like an easy, a one move switch?
Okay, I can go anywhere. I can
go. So you'll go Trossard over Salah?
Yeah, I can afford Salah. I can get him in. I mean, his price has come down so much. I can get him in. But I don't want to, because I think that week that slot there is pretty much only for 1 week. So I just want to get a good captain in. I don't know if Salah is the best captain against West Ham that week. Or traditionally, when you look at the team, when you look at the fixtures at the beginning of the season, Salah against West Ham, well, there you go. That's the captain sorted. But this time around, I'm not so sure. I mean, he could do well. Obviously, he is Salah, but I think there's better options, because that slot there, I'm eyeing up for Foden basically, or Saka. But it'd be one of those two, because I think, as we're going to talk about a bit later, my priority isn't game week 12. My priority is from game week 13 to 16, as quickly as possible. I want to treble up on City and Arsenal.
Well, don't go giving things away from later on.
I've been saying that on Twitter for the past few days. Years. It's no secret. They're good teams, Right,
let's move on. Quick, before he gives away any more spoilers. Right, Rich, we're moving on to the best cheap defenders now, because obviously we're thinking about the blank game week coming up, and looking at kind of the best cheap enablers. So we've got a big list here of the best cheap defenders, because they're usually the ones you kind of invest in. And obviously we're looking at kind of maybe going to 5 in midfield. So we're going to look at cheap defenders first, and then we got cheap mids and forwards after, haven't we?
We have, yeah. So start with defenders.
Yes, please.
Yeah, perfect. So these are the best defenders. They're 4.9 and under. They've had 3 starts in the last 4.
At least 3 starts. Sorry,
at least 3 starts in the last 4. So so it could be 4. I know, Joe, you originally put this table together with XGI, but it was negligible.
It was so negligible. I might as well have put it on hair follicles or something. I don't know, just totally meaningless.
And Castagna was the best of the bunch, which was not that great.
No, it was a goal every blue moon. The others were just whatever. Some point in the next decade.
So instead, Joe's kindly sorted the table. It's by baseline bonus. So they're the points you get for tackling, passing, and all that stuff. And it doesn't include if they get an assist, a goal, or a clean sheet. So if we start with, I guess we've got a Leicester defender at the top. So not even gonna go there. Not even gonna go there. Botman is surprisingly high despite his recent antics, with 5.5 minutes per baseline bonus. Then followed by Castagna at 5.7. Then followed by Webster at 5.8. Gomez at 5.8. Cresswell 5.9. Sensei at 6. No, not a 6, at 4.5 million, but 6 minutes per baseline bonus. Then it's Evans, Tarkowski, Anderson and Gaihi, the Palace defenders, and Lewis Dunk rounds it out. So personally, I know Joe's got this issue as well, the Patterson problem. Some people might be a little bit worried about Nico Williams, for example. So Webster and Dunk, to be honest, these are the two I'm really, really looking at, because they've got a decent fixture this week. Game week 12 is an awesome fixture. We've been through Brighton's defensive stats before. That they're right. I think it was last week we looked at them and they were right up there with not just behind Arsenal and teams like that. I know a lot of people last week looked at the Palace defenders who've had one clean sheet. I think it's one clean sheet the entire season. But they're still pretty decent options. And a big reason I wanted to free up this money was so I can go for Dunk or Webster. I mean, Joe's looking at the same thing, aren't you? I don't know if you are, Andy.
I'm tempted to go more towards the Crystal Palace boys, just because their fixtures over the next 4, as opposed to Brighton's drop off quite a lot, don't they, after the blank? And also, Brighton haven't had a clean sheet in the last 4 games, have they? Whereas Palace at least have 1, but even then that's not amazing. But they both got. It's great to see that Palace and Brighton both have those lovely fixtures in the blank. They both got Brighton have Forest at home and Palace have Wolves at home, which is obviously quite nice. But I mean, if you had to pick between them, you would be going for the Brighton boys, would you, Joe?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm literally have got to pick between them because I have a Patterson problem. I've got 2 free transfers. I'm not in a position to burn them. I'm not that flush. So I'm gonna use it, and it's perfect to replace Patterson. And whoever I replace Patterson with, are probably not even going to play this week. They're just going to be on my bench in case Mitrovic doesn't turn up again. So I'm specifically looking at either Brighton or Palace, the M23 rivals. And it's Anderson's 4.5 and Gahey 4.3, and they're both very similar in terms of baseline bonus. They're picking up a baseline bonus point every 6 minutes or so. And I sorted it by this because I don't know about anyone else, but when I have these cheap defenders and they're playing and they're maybe up for a clean sheet or something, I tend to look at sort of where they are in the bonus reckoning, and that's basically what you're not really going to get attacking returns from these lads. So you're gonna look for that, and it's really good when you've got Anderson or whatever, Webster, and you can see they're really high up there. You think, oh my god, they can be getting 2 or 3 bonus if we can get a clean sheet out of them as well, and that's why they're sorted by this. But Webster and is marginally better, or has been marginally better for bonus. Because he is a bit more of a passing defender. Dunk, I under the new manager that could change, but Dunk is still pretty good, pretty option. I know that Tony D in the chat's talking about Estupinan. He's just got him in, and the reason he's not in here is he's pretty good for getting bonus, but he's nowhere near Webster and Dunk. But he's still very good. But when I sorted by expected goal involvement, he was actually the best Brighton defender for expected goal involvement there. So he's marginally better than once in a blue moon for getting a goal.
I was comparing those two before we started, because that's my decision is Dunk and Webster, and it was I was shocked that Dunk has no XG, whereas Webster has that 0.1.
In the last game, I noticed that there were a couple of times where he was a little bit more advanced in the box during set pieces, and that's where you want Dunk there. So, I'm going to make a decision by the end of the week. For Patterson, I will get one of Webster, Dunk, Anderson, or Gahey. And I think it will be the Crystal Palace guy, the Gahey, because he's 4.3, so he's cheaper. And to be honest, they're all much of a muchness. And with Brighton, you've got Brentford. See, Tony can score anytime. Bomo can as well. Then they've got that great Forest fixture, but he's going to be on my bench anyway. And then with the Crystal Palace, they've got Leicester next up, so I'll be benching for that. Then they've got Wolves. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. That's a great fixture to have Wolves at home. That's as good a chance of a clean sheet as you can get. Then they've got Everton, Southampton. So I think it's going to be one of the Crystal Palace ones. I've got to think long term. I don't want to keep messing around. I mean, game week 16. That's the last game week we've got for I call it the Oval. That's my Sky head on there. But when the World Cup and we've all got a wild card effectively, and I just want a cheap player in who's going to get off the bench. And I don't know if a Brighton one's going to be that, because they've got City and Chelsea in the next 4. So the fixtures are. I don't know if I can rely on. I don't think I can rely on a clean sheet against City there. So yeah, I think Crystal Palace one's my ones, but lots of other options there. Newcastle. I put Joe Gomez in there as well, because he's going to get a run. I think Liverpool. So in that awful Liverpool defence, someone to consider, a Liverpool defender for 4.5. I know you've got City next, but then West Ham, Nottingham Forest, then Leeds. That's pretty good. You could get a couple of clean sheets out of that if you can play still.
And Rich, I was going to ask as well, because obviously a lot of people are going to be in the position where they may be like Joe and they've got 2 free transfers, or they've got 1 free transfer and they're not sure where to use it and they want to think about the blank. Is getting Neco Williams out of your team a priority now? Because he's got a horrible fixture in the blank game week. He didn't even start the game against Villa, and that was an awful game, by the way, but didn't start that game. Would you be, because I wouldn't normally be asking this question if you weren't potentially relying on him to play in the blank, would moving him to somebody like Guehi or Anderson or a Brighton lad be a good decision moving forward if everything else was fine?
I think it depends on your team. I'd assume whether he starts or not in game week 12 that he's going to get you 1 point. So it's just if you have the luxury to do it, because I mean, part of the reason I'm happy, and it's such a cop out saying it's team dependent, but part of the reason I'm considering the Brighton defenders over the Palace defenders is because of how my team's going to rotate. I've planned ahead. I've tried to plan ahead and look how my team will look, on each game week. And just for my team, the Brighton defenders suit it more. I mean, I've got Botman, for example. He's quite high up in this table. Yeah. I mean, there's a bit of, sometimes he could end up being benched. He's not 100% nailed. He's probably hit that threshold of 3 in the last 4 games. So I think, say you had Neco Williams, it really depends what other fires you've got in your team. Yeah. I don't think it's worth, because I guess a part of it is as well, he's very, very cheap. You might have got him for 4 or 4.1. You're going to have to go up and spend more money if you want to get someone who's definitely going to play in game week 12.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's pretty team dependent, but as a general rule, I wouldn't, I wouldn't go desperate. I wouldn't do a hit to do it. I wouldn't want to sacrifice myself after game week 12, bringing in those, actually, I don't want to mention your segment, bringing in players for certain teams that you might want to bring in after the blank.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, there you go. There's our defenders anyway. And we're going to move on to best cheap midfielders and forwards now, which might not be in quite as much demand, because obviously we have Andreas Pereira there, who's our perfect kind of bench player, but especially when they come in for you, aren't they, Rich? But yeah, that's lovely then. But you need to know who's performing well in these cheap spots. And right in the middle, highlighted in blue, is Joe's favourite Crystal Palace forward. But Rich, talk us through these, mate.
Yeah, and I guess if someone's got Bailey as well, maybe some of the midfielders would be a bit more interesting, because obviously he missed the last game. He completely missed the squad. He dropped in price again. I think it's to 4.6. So he's starting at 5. He's almost at the price of, he must be at the same price as Pereira now.
Yeah.
So there might be some people looking, although a lot of these players are much more expensive now than Bailey.
Yeah.
And I guess with the strikers, we're waiting for Mitrovic news, aren't we? So to see if he's going to play this weekend. So right at the top, these are sorted by XGI, the non-penalty per 90 minutes. We've got Daka right at the top with 0.59. Almiron's in second, so he's a midfielder. He's 5.1 million, 0.59, which is actually pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I guess the risk with him is he going to actually stay in the team? You'd assume so. I looked at this a bit last week, actually, for a video I did. And he's, the Newcastle fans think he deserves to stay there. He's 5.1 million, 0.59. Which is actually pretty incredible. I guess the risk with him is he going to actually stay in the team? You'd assume so. I looked at this a bit last week, actually, for a video I did. And he's, the Newcastle fans think he deserves to stay there. but then they still have, Isak to come back from injury. St. Maximan's back as well. So he's gonna be up against it to keep his place. But for 5.1, if you can get from Bailey to Almiron, in game week 12 they play Everton. I think that's almost like 3 points at that amount. Then we've got Gray. I think no, that wasn't the one you went for, Andy, was it? You went for some other Everton midfielder. He's 0.51 XGI non-pen. Christie of Bournemouth. I was trying to remember who you went for. I thought you were going to go for an Everton midfielder.
Iwobi, was it?
Anthony Gordon.
Oh, it was Gordon. Yeah, not Iwobi. Yeah, it was Gordon. I don't know why I said that out loud. I'll just keep.
That's right.
You're like Homer Simpson.
I was like, "What's this?"
I think below Gray, to be honest, they drop quite sharply, don't they? When you're hitting that 0.3.
This is the last 4 matches. Range. So once again, sort of small sample, but then again, it's the most recent sample, and we really want them to play and get something for us in game week 12, don't we? So
we do, yeah. It's just the ones you've highlighted are interesting because Daka and Almiron. I think Almiron's safe for now. Daka could have some rotation risk. Despite the returns, because of Vardy. Yeah, Edouard. I know you wanted him for the scout team last week, Joe. He obviously he ended up scoring. Yeah, but people have been stung with him in the past. They've got to free their minds. Again, maybe I'm making this up. Andy might have brought Edouard in.
That was then. This is Mateta. Now. It's a new world order for Crystal Palace.
Crystal Palace forwards only last about 4 or 5 weeks. Honestly, it's every cycle of move.
Well, that's it.
Their striker.
So we want to get them on their run here and then ditch them.
But it's not even that great underlying stats. I know the fixtures are pretty well. The fixtures are very good, but 0.3 and it's a slight rotation risk. I think even though looking at these stats, Solanke has awful stats, I think I still prefer him.
Yeah. I mean, this is the last 4, but then again, he's the lowest on this list with 0.2 XGI non-penalty per 90, but he's got 3 assists and a goal, so 24 FPL points. The fixtures are great: Fulham, Southampton. And then it gets a bit bad, West Ham and Tottenham. But the next 2, definitely, you should better get something there.
I feel like Almiron's the standout on the whole list. I think he's the only one I'll consider.
So, do you know who my favourite one is?
Go on.
Philip Billing.
Billings.
Honestly,
what about Christie at Bournemouth? Christie's got a much better expected goal involvement.
The problem with Christie is he can go in and out. Because they do have other players that can play there, whereas Billing is he does just play behind that striker, and he's loving life at the moment. He's getting the goals, and obviously they've got Fulham and Southampton coming up in the next 2. Yeah. So if I was trying to upgrade, I think I'd swerve Almiron. I think I'd go for Billing.
This is the gaffer manager in Andy now. I've seen it since she started playing at the start of last season.
I love Billing. He's awesome.
The old Ebanks Blake memo.
Everybody remembers Billing at Huddersfield, don't they? Where he was a bit more of a centre mid, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Whereas now
at
Bournemouth, exactly. Whereas
now
Bournemouth,
look at
really
him.
Is that
now look at him with his expected goal involvement of a fifth of a goal.
He's more than Eze.
Yeah.
More than Solanke. Yeah. And we know Joe loves Solanke.
I do. Do you know what? In the captaincy video today, I put him in as an outside captaincy choice because Fulham's defensive stats are so bad.
Yeah.
And Solanke is nailed on striker and on penalties. So
I thought you meant Billing then.
Not Billing. Solanke, I think, is a genuine captaincy shout this week. That sounds weird.
Well,
in a fantasy world where there's no fancy world where there's no Haaland, that is.
Well, that's the big question, though. So, because I'm going to watch that game this weekend, I'm going to watch the Bournemouth at Fulham one. But in my head, I'm thinking because Mitrovic is not definitely going to be in, is he? He's still a doubt for this weekend. So you've got Solanke there, you've got Edouard there, you've got Daka there. The 3 strikers that probably stand out on here. Who would you go with at the moment, then, Joe? You just said Solanke is probably going to be even a captaincy shout this week.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm
is that the way you go?
No, it's difficult for me because I'm talking with my personal team. See, the last one, the really boring one about all the cheap defenders, that's the market I'm in because I'm looking for a Patterson replacement. I'm not looking to replace any of my forward line. Yeah. So I don't want anyone here. But if I did, I like these midfielders a bit more. in game week 12, I think Almiron. I think, as Rich said, I think Almiron is the one I would look at there.
Okay, so you swerve all the strikers.
I think it's for me in my team, and we'll come to this a bit later, but Haaland, Jesus, Kane, I mean, we can't afford all of them. No. Mitrovic, when he's back, Tony, proven asset. I mean, all of these strikers, that are vying for our attention. So, how can it's difficult for Edouard and Solanke to get some attention long term. So we're really looking at these for like game week 12. But after game week 12, I can't really look past Haaland or Jesus and whoever else I can afford.
What about you, Rich?
I think I'd go for Solanke because I think the whole thing is, if you're trying to get to game week 12, you just want someone cheap who can play. Yeah. And then if you end up keeping them, it's not the end of the world. So that's how I'd feel with the Brighton defenders, for example. Get them in. They play at home against Forest. And then if they're stuck on your bench, because it's only a few weeks until the World Cup anyway. Yeah. So I think the same with Solanke, and it gets a bit of money out your team. And then you can reinvest that in like the players that I'm sure you'll mention in the next section. So I think I'd just go to Solanke. Fulham and then Southampton's pretty good, isn't it?
He does create as well. He's not too bad. He got 2 assists this weekend too.
I mean, for these types of players here, so if I did get a Solanke in, for example, Edouard, I would never bench them really because they can get a goal or goal involvement at any time. So, my bench is usually the sort of 4.5s, that kind of thing really. And so for the way I play the game, if I got one of these players in, I'd want to play them all the time really. Yeah. But yeah, I think if you are looking for a cheap striker at this price, I think Edouard and Solanke in particular this week are pretty good. And Daka's got that. I mean, Daka's probably the one, but tight turnaround in games. Vardy coming in, I think he's going to miss out basically on some game time there. But Almiron really.
It's a good point actually with Daka and Edouard because I guess we'll be bringing these players in for game week 12. I'd be absolutely gutted, if they were benched when I bought them in for game week 12 and then they were benched.
Yeah,
I'll be gutted. And
yes,
to go back to defenders briefly, I've got Botman. I wouldn't bring Botman in because despite him having a good fixture, there's a small chance that he doesn't actually start the game against Everton. So I guess Solanke is perfect because he is nailed.
Yeah. See, I would say, I think if we're thinking about game week 12, these are the sorts of players we should be sort of keeping an eye on for game week 12. And I think as Rich said there, if you're getting them in for game week 11 and then they get some injury or something or suspended or something, I mean, that's the reason you've got them in is gone. And it'd be so frustrating. So if you can possibly do nothing this week, do it. If you've got just one transfer, try and get go into game week 12 with 2 transfers because the worst thing to do is getting Gibbs White in and then he doesn't play in game week 12 or something like that.
Yeah. Saying it now, lads. Philip Billing, easy answer to everything. Right. Moving on to the next bit then. So we are putting on our future eyes and we're going to have a look towards game week 12 because you have to be making moves thinking, with game week 12 in your mind now, to be honest. A couple of weeks ago, it was fine to bring someone like Foden in. Obviously, he's performed, but now bringing Foden in before Liverpool and then a blank seems kind of suboptimal, I would say, in Seb's famous words. So let's have a look at game week 12. So on the screen now, we've got game week 12. We've got the fixtures for game week 12 in terms of rating them in difficulty. Obviously, we've got Arsenal, Man City at the bottom there with the blank, but we've got Brighton have the best fixture on paper against Nottingham Forest. Then we've got Southampton next against Bournemouth, which is interesting because Bournemouth at home against Southampton, I don't think that's as easy as maybe we think, but we'll see Bournemouth in 5th in a minute. Newcastle next against Everton at home, then Villa against Fulham. And then right towards the bottom, we've got West Ham against Liverpool away. Spurs, Man United, Brentford are all towards the bottom. So we're kind of looking here and saying these are the kind of players that we want to have in our team. We want to have Brighton players. We want to have Newcastle players. Potentially some Bournemouth players. A Fulham player, although Mitrovic is probably the only one we touch and he might not. We're hoping he'd be back for the blank game week. Crystal Palace are up there in Leeds and Leicester and Liverpool are right in the middle there. But when we're looking at the Rate My Team projections for player scores, Salah is right at the top. He's projected to get 7.36 in that fixture against West Ham, which I think is inflated personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to say, I used to have to input some data into Rate My Team. So this and a lot of other models, you will see the big boys being top, whether you think they are going to be or not. So Salah's always going to be top. Salah could have no legs and he would be top of this.
Yeah. So, and funnily enough, we then got Trent next at 5.2. Then we've got an awful lot of players towards that kind of just above 4.5, which is Sterling, then Maddison, then Trossard, then Zaha. Then it's Welbeck, then Reece James, McAllister, Grosh, Mitrovic, Kane, and then Son. So it's a lot of Liverpool. It's a lot of Chelsea, Brighton, Crystal Palace, Fulham, and then Spurs towards the bottom. If you've got your main core of your team being based around those players, I think you're all right. The biggest thing for me is looking at this, and we've already touched on it a little bit, is just how important is it to get those Liverpool players in? Because a couple of weeks ago, that's all we were talking about. All we were talking about was, right, we're going to sell Kane, we're going to downgrade him, we're going to upgrade a midfielder to get Salah, or we're going to ditch Cancelo to get Trent in and make sure we've got cover in this blank game week. Rich, the projections are saying that is exactly what we should be doing. The fixture ticker is probably saying the opposite because they're about halfway down. And our heads are kind of saying the same thing as this fixture ticker, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'd see them separately. As in, Liverpool have still got a good fixture. You know, they're at home. It's a home game, which I guess is key. And a lot of the teams who've got a better fixture than Liverpool, I mean, aren't very good. Like, no disrespect, but some of them are pretty poor. The teams above them. So, I mean, like I mentioned, I'm definitely, the reason I've got Salah and I don't have players like Cancelo, and the reason I've had a bad game week is because I've gone for Salah over a lot of, you know, really, really good options. So I've sacrificed quite a bit to get Salah in. That's why I am excited about game week 12, and I am excited about captaining Salah. Unless something happens this week, I think captaincy is going to be the main thing. I mean, I look at this list and I wonder if Mitrovic would be higher if he was fit as well, because I guess there's some doubt. I mean, I did think a few weeks ago, if I didn't go for Salah, Mitrovic might be the best captain. So I'm surprised he's below like McAllister, for example. I know McAllister's on penalties, and Brighton have had a fair few penalties.
And they got Nottingham Forest, haven't they?
Yeah, I'd have Mitrovic higher, you know, in my mind. I'd have him right up there, not as high as Salah, but I'd have him higher than Sterling as well.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, that was about it, really. I mean, Kane. I feel like Kane should be higher as well. Maybe I'm not high enough on Brighton. Maybe I should.
Yeah, you've got to get on the Brighton bandwagon.
Yeah,
Joe, you've already mentioned we're not going. The way it's going, me and you aren't going to have Salah. So, so who is it that we're captaining? You're saying about getting Trossard in. I'm probably not going to have Trossard. So if that's the case, I won't get to him. I don't think, but. If that's the case, who am I captain? Am I really going to go with Maddison or Zaha? It seems like a fun week to go different.
Yeah, it is. It is. There were certain weeks in the season where you can go different with the captaincy. So in previous seasons, that's the sort of Calvert-Lewin time where you can be a bit different. It's when, you know, the bigger teams are playing each other. And a season where you don't have like a Haaland, or in previous seasons, say Luis Suarez at Liverpool. And looking at this list is good in that these are the players. So the fact that Salah is there is because of his pedigree. It's because he's on penalties. He's the main man for Liverpool. And so the Rate My Team computers, assuming that, you know, on paper he is the best pick, but on form this season and current form as well, I think the best picks are Maddison with Leicester playing Leeds. I think that is a great fixture for Maddison, and Trossard at Brighton, who is the main man. These are the talisman for their teams, and Trossard is against Nottingham Forest as well. So, I mean, the worst defence is Fulham, but Villa are playing them, and Villa's attack's really out of sorts, so you wouldn't go there for the captaincy. So I think this list is useful. Zaha is in the mix as well. Crystal Palace play Wolves to a lesser extent, though, because you never know with Wolves. Could be quite a good defence. So, yeah, I think this is a great week to go different. I fully expect to see a lot of Maddison captains, Trossard, has been brought in already, and I think will be captained. And some might go for Sterling. And the only problem with Sterling, I think, even though I think it's a great fixture against Brentford, but I just think, will he start? I mean, it's Chelsea. We all got a rude awakening well, I didn't as a Brighton fan with Potter. This is what he does. You don't know who's going to be on that team sheet. So I think there's for the foreseeable, that puts Chelsea players off the captaincy menu. And so, Maddison or Trossard currently are my main captains. I'm going to just go without Salah.
And Rich, so if you're unconvinced by Liverpool and you're thinking you won't get them in, and you're looking at everybody else and thinking, it's not looking like a spectacular week, potentially, do you not prioritise this week and prioritise making sure you have those players you need after this week?
See, I was going to make a point about other Liverpool players, so I'll park that for a second.
No, definitely bring that up as well, because obviously Diaz was the main one I was looking at, and obviously he's now out.
Yeah, no, I knew you were. You mentioned it yesterday as well. There's him and there's Jota as well. Mm-hmm. So I would still go for it. I mean, maybe you don't go for Salah, but I would really want to captain a Liverpool player. I do agree with what Joe says. There are a lot of, sometimes there's these fun weeks where you can go against it. And if you don't think Liverpool are good, I can understand it. But I just see that Liverpool fixture and I just can't resist. And if I didn't have Salah, I would be looking at captaining Darwin or, Trent, for example, if he wasn't injured. Yeah. I find it really hard. These players like Maddison and Trossard and Zaha, I'd find it really hard to pick between them. I mean, I'd probably pick Zaha out of those three, but purely because he's got penalties. And you know how addicted to penalties I am.
Yeah,
I just can't see past that Liverpool fixture against West Ham. And I don't think we're going to learn much about Liverpool against Man City either. Even if Liverpool lose, like 4-1 at the weekend, I don't think it would change my mind that much. Seb put a really good thread on Twitter earlier actually about Salah, and he hasn't actually dropped off that much. I mean, obviously he was at a really high level last season, but he's just not getting as many penalties, etc. So he
was nowhere near that biggest drop off chart we showed before. Nowhere near it. Salah hasn't dropped off.
No, he hasn't. That's the thing. So I'm trying almost not to chase points. Well, clearly I'm not chasing points because of my recent scores. But yeah, I'm trying to just keep a calm head, and I understand why people don't want to go for Salah, etc. He's hard to get in, and he's easy to ignore because his ownership's so low. So it's not going to hurt you even if he did score like 6 goals in game week 12. But yeah, I'm still really high on them, and maybe I'm wrong, and it's going to get worse and worse. But I just can't see past them, and I find it hard to make an argument not to do it.
So let me ask it a different way then.
Okay.
What's more important for your team? If you don't have Salah, getting Salah into your team, or ensuring that you can have 4 or 5 Man City and Arsenal players after the blank?
Yeah. That's really tough, because obviously that's something I'm struggling with, and I've been struggling in recent weeks because I've sold all my City and Arsenal players to have players like Salah. So obviously the last couple of weeks the right answer was to not go for Salah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go down the Salah route, and it's going to mean I'm not going to be able to immediately get all these popular 8 million midfielders in. And I mean I could be completely wrong, but sometimes I think it's easier to stick with what you have. So I can understand why people who haven't got Salah, there's no reason to rush and get him in.
Yeah.
But then I guess a situation like Joe's where you've got KDB and you could choose between Trossard or Salah, I'd hands down, go for Salah. I'd captain him. If it goes badly, maybe I'd move straight off.
We've already seen that matchup between Trossard and Salah, and who came out on top of that? The guy who got the hat-trick.
That's true. Trossard. That's true.
Who is the better player currently? I would say Trossard is currently the better player.
There was a Liverpool player that got a hat-trick that day as well, though, wasn't there? Did Firmino get one?
Not a hat-trick, did he? Did he get a hat-trick?
I can't remember now.
I don't know. I don't know. All I saw was Brighton and some other blokes.
But I guess I could argue that Gross was the best Brighton player a few weeks ago before Trossard got that hat-trick. So That feels like it can change quickly, and I guess it can change at Liverpool as well. But yeah, I'm probably in the minority that I really, really, I'm hyping up Salah probably too much, but I've got blinkers on, and I believe it's going to turn around. And if I'm wrong,
So
look at my arrow anyway.
I mean, I wonder though with whether Kane or Son could be a better option, because we know how explosive they can be, especially away. Manchester United come unstuck against the better teams, even though they are much improved this season. And I just wonder, I mean, I think if Kane is fit, I think Kane is a strong option as well for the captaincy. So if you have, say, got De Bruyne or, and you've got 2 free transfers, you could swap De Bruyne down to Trossard and use that extra money to beef up a Mitrovic or Tony. Not a lot of people will have the luxury to make that move because it's going to be tough to get 12 players. To get 11 players out.
What if you wanted to do that move and not get Kane but get Darwin Núñez?
Well, yeah, you could do that as well. Joe? I mean, if I was to back a Liverpool asset, I would probably pick Darwin because he is currently the guy who's through the centre. You don't know though. It could be one of those games where Firmino plays, and then Firmino has got either a mythical or a real life hat trick in him. So I think he's good there. But I mean, I think Son is in the mix because of the way my team is set up, and other people might be in that situation. I think KDB to Son, captain Son against Manchester United, and then either keep Son or move on and start loading back up on Man City or Arsenal, or Saka or Foden, for example, is a really viable strategy. And I don't rule that out.
Yeah. Ben Holland in the chat, by the way, has mentioned what I was going to mention as well. I'm not sure about this United being an okay fixture for Spurs. I don't know. I know we obviously got ruined by City, but I think we're a lot harder to beat now than we were.
Who is the better team currently? Spurs and United. Who has the best attackers out of Spurs and United? Who has Harry Maguire in defence out of Spurs and United?
We're not playing Harry Maguire, though, are we?
Son and Kane can score against anyone. Martial, Rashford could maybe.
Anthony,
would you captain them though?
3 and 3. No, I'm just saying. I don't think. I think Kane is. I think maybe he should be a little bit higher than players like Grosh and stuff. But
I get this. Do you know what?
Around the right
For
place,
about 3 decades now, I've had this from Manchester United fans. They are so blinkered. Oh, but we're amazing. No, you're not.
That's not what I'm saying. But I do think. I mean, if it was between Salah and Kane, obviously I'd be going with Salah over Kane. But yeah,
I mean, going with the fixture ticker, Spurs have got the second hardest game, and the only team with a red fixture on that is West Ham with that Liverpool away. So yeah, I'm saying about Liverpool again. I find it really hard. I feel like it's a coin flip if you don't go for a Liverpool asset. They just all seem so close. I mean, I honestly, I could see Kane being a good captain, but it's the same as like Mitrovic. It's the same as Zaha. They're all, I don't know. No one stands out to me. They're just.
Well, as I've already mentioned, no one really stands out. And when you then go and look at game week 13 to 16 fixtures, when you look at who's at the top of there, top of the fixture ticker is Arsenal. So Arsenal, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Leicester and Brentford in the next 4 game weeks. Then it's Palace and then City are third. So we are potentially selling these Arsenal and City players or benching them, obviously. And obviously, Rich, I'm going to come back to this question because I want a really good answer from both of you if I can. And I know you've kind of, you maybe swerved or changed the question once or twice. But I really do want a good answer in terms of,
okay.
For me, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at these fixtures. They are just gorgeous fixtures after the blank. They're the 2 best teams in the league. You can't say anything else now. They are the 2 best teams in the league, Arsenal and City. They're in the top 3 in terms of fixtures moving forward. For me, it is way more a priority to make sure you have those Arsenal and City players in your team afterwards. The fact you've got Haaland, Foden, Cancelo, if you can get those three and have at least 2 Arsenal players, Saka, Martinelli, Jesus or Saliba, something like that, that seems to me like the priority.
See, part of my plan is so I'm going to have 2 players going into game week 12. So I'm going to have Martinelli and I'm going to have Haaland, and I'm going to hold on to them, and I'm going to have 2 free transfers. So my plan would be to do like a mini wild card and bring 3 of those players in. So for -4, I'll have 5. So I'll go from 2 to 5, the Man City and Arsenal players.
By the way, I'll just very quickly apologise. It does say Everton at the top. I'm looking at it on the little OBS screen, and I thought it was Arsenal. Arsenal are 5th. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, but Arsenal are still high
it's
up.
Lovely fixtures still.
Yeah. So the third and best fixture. Sorry, the 3rd and 5th best fixtures we're going to look at bringing in. But so part of the reason for my plan, which has gone horrifically so far, is that I'm going to have those 2 free transfers. I can go from 2 to 5 pretty quickly with just the -4. I could go for 2 players to 4, with no hit. So I think it's easy to get onto them quickly. Obviously, I may well sell Salah or Kane at that point as well to fund it. It's just been, the captaincies. So, maybe Salah's not long-term a good pick. I hope he is. I think he will be, but you've got to stay flexible. And that's why I want to have 2 transfers going into game week 12. But obviously that was a decision I made, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
Is that a better answer than before?
That is a better answer. And Joe, what do you think? Would you say it's a big priority? Like, for me,
it is
I'm
the
looking
priority.
at maybe rolling this week, so I have 2 free transfers after the blank, so I can try and get them in.
Yeah, definitely. I've got 2 free transfers. I'm going to use one because I've got to use one. So I'm going to use that to get rid of Patterson. But then for game week 12, I want to get an 11 out. But then game week 13 is my priority. And what I would really like is to go into game week 13 with those 2 free transfers, so that whoever I get in to replace De Bruyne, I can then remove. So if I get Trossard, for example, Trossard plays City next, so it's a good time to remove him, and get Foden in or Saka, whichever is looking like they're definitely going to play. And I will bench Cancelo, De Bruyne, and Martinelli, and those 3 will be on my bench. So in game week 13, I will go into that with Martinelli, Haaland, Cancelo, and Foden or Saka. And then the following week, so game week 14, I'll get whoever else I haven't got in. So I'll get either Saliba in, or I'll get in Saka if I don't get him in the week before. So the priority for me is as quickly as possible from game week 13, triple up on City, triple up on Arsenal. And so I think if you're wildcard, if you're holding the wildcard, this is something I posted a few days ago. If you're holding your wildcard, use it in game week 13, because in game week 13, you're going to have a massive advantage over people. Some people will have some of these players, but you can go in with triple Arsenal, Man City, have a cup of tea, and just relax. Don't do anything for the rest of the season, or until the World Cup is anyway. And I think that is the priority. So for me, I can't get 6 in game week 13, but I can certainly try and get 5. And I think that's really, really good move. And so I'm quite envious of that good wildcard time. I think that's there. And some people are going to do, possibly not the fine upstanding people that listen and watch the Scoutcast, but some people will start removing the likes of Haaland, Martinelli, Cancelo even, but certainly Martinelli and Haaland, who they've got a lot of value tied up in. It's going to cost them much more to get them back in. And you're definitely going to want them back in. Martinelli's a gift at 6 whatever, and he's performing like a 9 million midfielder. And Haaland is ridiculous. We haven't seen the likes of him for years. So you're going to want him back. So bench him. Yeah, bench him game week 12.
Lovely. And just to reinforce the fact as well, I've got the projections for player scores for game week 13, game week 14, game week 15, game week 16. Obviously, Haaland's at the top there. Then you've got Salah. So Rich will be quite happy that Salah's second there. Then De Bruyne, then Kane, then Son. Then Trent, Jesus, Cancelo, Sterling, Bowen, and Martinelli. So it's heavily Arsenal and City there, which is what we were expecting with them both being, like I said, the best 2 teams in the league. But, Rich has got a point with what he's saying with Salah. Salah's second highest projected scorer there, so it's going to be interesting to see which way it goes there. But I think it's just making sure you have that plan for afterwards if you want to get those players back in, not to use the blank game week and think, oh, I need to get these players in and make sure I'm covered in the blank game week, and then mess yourself up for game week 13 to 16 because those fixtures are so lovely. And I think a lot of people could end up doing that, and it would hurt them a little bit moving forward, wouldn't it? Yeah. Cool.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. That was
right.
Rich. Yes,
Andy.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I concur.
Yes, I didn't direct it at anybody.
Okay.
Right. Let's move on then to the community team. So the community team actually did better than anybody this week. 75 points this week for the community team, which is absolutely lovely. So let us know in the chat if you beat 75 points for the community team this week. They had Pope in goal, they had Cancelo, James, Trippier, De Bruyne, Zaha, Martinelli, Maddison, Andreas Pereira came on for Mitrovic, and then Haaland and Wilson. And Rich, am I right in saying that you have taken over this, kind of taken the reins a little bit from Seb? Do you know where it is in the league roughly at the moment?
So I was just trying to find it on my phone then, but yeah, so Seb's passed the team over to me kindly, give me instructions on the best way to do it on Twitter. So yeah. We've got 2 free transfers still. So it was all voted on. We did Isaac to Wilson. So Wilson came in straight away with the 5 points. Believe we got Andreas off the bench, similarly to my team. So a little bit of jam there. So yeah, we've got 2 free transfers. We've got a little bit of money in the bank. I'll need to check how much, but yeah, so it's in a great position. I think it's about 200k or something like that, and that was before we had the auto sub. So I'm just loading it up now. In the world, we're 178k in the world.
Not too bad. So it's I mean, I'm looking at this. There's not a great deal we need to really do, to be perfectly honest. I think it's quite well set up for the blank as well. I suppose you've got to use 1 free transfer. So if Mitrovic is out, obviously maybe that's something you can do. But apart from that, it's maybe Neco Williams to a Brighton defender, something like that.
Yeah, has this got 2 free transfers, this team?
2 free transfers. There's a little bit of money in the bank as well. So
yeah,
I'm doing a similar move to us, Joe.
No, I mean, in this case here, because Neco Williams, I can't see getting a good score in Game Week 12 because he's against Brighton, but also there is a danger that he hasn't regained his place from Serge Aurier. So I would say, get him in, get a Brighton defender in. He's definitely going to play. He's got a good fixture next 2. It's good to go against Brentford as well. I think that would be, rather than burn the transfer. Or you could look to move Pope, but I don't really like any of the other goalkeeping options. Just Pope's as good as the rest, really. So
Pope was one I did think of because that could bring a little bit of money out, and then we'd have 2 free transfers to next week, and you're both going to hate this, but then KDB to Salah for a week, captain, and because also
don't you.
Because then we've got
the community with you.
Because we've got
Seb would never have done this.
No. Seb probably would do this.
He would have done it.
Because there's 3 Man City players and an Arsenal, so one of them's going to have to go. De Bruyne is the obvious one.
De Bruyne to I mean, if you can afford Salah, but De Bruyne to someone, it doesn't matter, someone, and consider them for the captaincy, and then move them on to either Saka or Foden, which is sort of what I'm saying, because that's sort of what I'm doing with my team. But this team is set up very similarly to my team, so that's why I'm saying it's sort of on the same path for the remainder of the season.
We've got 0.7 in the bank, so we might actually be able to get to Salah. Obviously, what I'll do is I'll tweet it out exactly how Seb does, and we can vote on that.
Yeah, I think interesting to see which way they go.
I think Williams to, I mean, essentially you just want them to play in 12. So look at that. I mean, it could, an Everton defender and another Palace. Get Anderson in from Palace. It doesn't really matter because they're just going to be bench fodder most of the time. A Brighton defender, and then you've got all that scope in Game Week 12 to make that decision around De Bruyne. And this is really well set up for Game Week 13. Going back to Andy's previous section, this is set up. This is on that trajectory for loading up on City and Arsenal. Some research I didn't do this week, I should have done, but I noticed this week and the last 2 or 3 weeks, basically my points each week are totally dominated by Arsenal and City, and I haven't even completely loaded up on Arsenal. And that's how good they are. I mean, they're getting their players are getting double-digit returns. We're captaining one of them all season. Jesus at the start, Haaland now.
That's why I'm looking forward to game week 12.
Yeah.
No pain.
Yeah, they can't hurt us anymore.
I like it. So Rich is going to send out the tweet again to see what we do with the community team. FPL Spartans, by the way, says very noticeable that since Rich has run the community team, it's now doing really well. So yeah.
I mean, I had no input. I actually didn't like the move that was voted on.
Take it,
and
Rich.
It did well.
Take it.
So
take it, Rich.
I mean, yeah. I might swap my team with this one now. I've got the password.
Yeah, I mean, the community team's beating 66% of the people on this stream. So anyway, let's look forward.
It's on for its first top 10k finish.
Exactly. Shut up, Rich. So we're looking at my bus team now. So I got Pope in goal, Cancelo, James, Zuma is playing at the moment, along with Bowen, Martinelli, Zaha, Maddison, Haaland, Kane, and Mitrovic. Ideally, what I really want to do is it's either going to roll and then use one free transfer next week during the blank and then have 2 free transfers moving forward, or it's to change Neco Williams to a Brighton defender or a Crystal Palace defender and then roll next week if I can. Mitrovic is the problem. We're unsure whether he's going to play this weekend, which is not ideal. I don't fancy moving him because there's not a lot I can do with the money I free up either. That's the problem. Like if I move him to Solanke, yes, I've then got Solanke, which is nice. But I was thinking, maybe I could move Andreas Pereira to Trossard or something fun like that. But it's not that much money you free up. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of that.
It's going back to that Manchester United thing again. Trippier is like amazing. He can get an attack and return. I can't understand why he's on the bench.
But who would you play him instead of? I mean, Mitrovic is the one that... Wow, we'll see.
You Manchester United fans, you got no clue, have you?
No, I know. So it's... I don't know. This is how it is at the moment anyway. Haaland captain against Liverpool. I can see him getting a hat-trick against Liverpool, to be perfectly honest. Everton was obviously the one that we were touting. Well, could we captain Kane in this one? But the more I'm looking at Liverpool, the more I'm thinking that Haaland can still do it against them as well. So, that's how it is at the moment. Pretty happy, like I said. I want to roll. That's what I want to do. I don't want to make any transfers, really. Joe, looking at your best team, talk us through it.
Righty-o. So it's very similar to the community team. I think the only main difference is I've got Tony difference, but he got the same points as Wilson, but it was just bench order, so I didn't get Pereira off my bench. That was the only difference with this week. So I got Pope in goal, Cancelo, Trippier, and James backline. Zaha, De Bruyne, Maddison, and Martinelli, Mitrovic, Haaland, and Tony. I'm happy with all of them. I hope James gets his start for Chelsea. On my bench, I got Ward and Pereira. I'm not taking any chances. He's first sub this time against Bournemouth. Williams is second sub. And then I've got Patterson, who's going to come out for a Brighton or Palace defender, as I was speaking about earlier. I don't know. It's probably going to be Gahey because he's just the cheapest. And they're all much of a muchness, really, in terms of expected points.
Yeah. Lovely stuff.
Haaland's my captain, by the way.
Yeah. Talking of Haaland being captain, we got somebody without Haaland captain now. Rich, talk us through your best team.
I've also just seen in the chat and on Twitter that Reece James might be injured.
Scratch that. I'm going to be removing Reece James for someone else. Probably still Gahey, though.
But, yeah. So my captain's not set. I've got Kane captain at the moment. So just to run through my team quickly, it's Ward, Perisic, James, and Trippier, Zaha, Martinelli, Salah, Pereira, Mitrovic, Kane captain, and Haaland. And then I've got Botman on the bench. I've got Bailey on the bench who's injured and Patterson on the bench who's injured. So that's why I've mentioned doing the similar move to what you're both thinking of. And it was the reason I got rid of Saka. So I've got that money to do Patterson to Dunk or Webster. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I don't need to. Maybe I could roll. But just with the yellow flags on Mitrovic, Kane, orange flag on Bailey, and a red flag on Patterson, maybe I would be pretty good. With the game weeks coming thick and fast, maybe I'd be better off having a sub. So I might just do it. Then the plan was to roll a transfer, not use one for the blank, and then coming out in 13, I'll have those transfers to hopefully get some Arsenal and Man City players back in. And then my weekends should be a lot easier when I've got players from the best teams, in the league at the moment. So yeah, nothing that exciting, but 4 flags is not helpful. If James is injured as well, I've got 5 flags and 1 free transfer. So yeah, not a definitive answer there.
That's not nice. I mean, God, yeah, I've brought James in this week. If he's now injured as well,
I know, but at least
absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I was about to say at least you got 2 frees, but you used.
I used my 2 frees.
Yeah, I genuinely, for one, I wasn't trying to rub it in there.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I remember the other week I was very jealous where you've got 2 transfers and you didn't know what to do.
I think if James is out, I mean, you with your team here, Rich. I mean, if it's looking like we don't know whether he's out and he's just precaution or something, or 1 week, you obviously can keep him and bench him. But Patterson can still move to a Brighton defender, and Dunk or Webster or Estupiñán look great to get in. I think Dunk would probably be the one I would favour. I don't know. If
Mitrovic is fine, I think I'll be okay with doing that because Trippier's an odd one. Like you mentioned, like I want to start him.
Yeah,
and maybe it's a good fixture for him. And the fact that I've started Ward over Pope. I'm not 100% sure on that yet. No. I'm just a bit sick of Newcastle defenders. But then imagine I bench them all, and then Newcastle keep that clean sheet.
Yeah, I know. That's
Old Trafford. Yeah.
I mean, I think still Patterson out for someone decent who's going to play and cheap and decent.
I mean, it needs to be done before game week 12 because I've got, like I mentioned, 4, almost 5, it could be 5 flags now. Like these, and they're the worst kind of players because they're the fringes of my squad with like Patterson and Bailey. So I've not been able to address them easily.
No, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? When you wild card or whatever, these injuries start building up, and if you don't replace them, even for a hit, quickly they can just mount up and then more injuries come before you know it. You've got a situation like this where you've got lots of flags in your team. I mean, I would imagine Kane's gonna be all right there. Look quite precautionary
without the blank as well. I'd be happy just holding like Patterson. I'll just keep him and just as a third sub, but because I don't want to have too much money on the bench after the blank either. So it is a balancing act, and that's why those players we talked about earlier, I think they're not essential, but they're they've got, for the price, they've got massive upside.
They do a job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as well you got so many Newcastle players in your team because the amount of flags that are waving around in your team at the moment. If James is there as well, like, oh, bless you, mate. Let's hope James is fine, but it's not sounding like it in the chat. Right, we've gone on for quite a while tonight, which is fine because obviously we've covered an awful lot of content, which is great. So we're going to do a real quick fire question round now. I've lost Andy Robertson. Robbo's gone. So we're going to do a really quick fire question round now. So if anybody's got any questions, please try and make your question so we can have a 1-word answer as much as possible. And we'll try and give you a really quick 1-word answer wherever we can. We've literally probably got about 5 minutes. So if we can get as many in as possible, that would be absolutely amazing. Historia Film says, what to do with Sterling? Do I sell or keep? Joe?
I think there's going to be other fires and he could play, but I think he is a risk now going forward because of Potter's rotation.
Yeah. Very good 1-word answer that is. And Rich?
I mean, it's not an easy question, but there's so much. Yeah, keep.
Keep for now, but
yeah. FPL 73 says I've got James, Trippier, and Guehi. 1 Man City and 1 Arsenal. Do I sell Trent and for who? What? Hang on, I'm going to skip that one. He's just told me 5 players he's got, and one of them is not Trent.
Right.
Football Man 10 says, evening gents, do I buy Pickford or Guaita and why? Cheers. Just which one, Pickford or Guaita? Rich?
Pickford, because he's more nailed.
Yeah,
I would say Guaita because I imagine unless he's got Ward and Everson, he's whichever goal he's got is probably on a par with Pickford. Whereas Guaita plays in Palace's fixtures are really good, so he's just a really handy glue player you can have in your squad for the rest of the season. Well, the rest of this next bit.
Kawak Kumar says, do I get a Chelsea keeper? Joe?
Well, it's looking like Kepa as the nod. And Potter does this. I know he did it in Brighton. Sanchez suddenly getting there. But yeah, it's cheap. But then wouldn't it be annoying? You get him and then suddenly Mendy's back in. Yeah. So there's always that risk. If you're a risky player, I would go for Kepa.
Rich?
I wouldn't waste the transfer.
Yeah. Michael Scott says, is Kane a hold until the World Cup? Rich?
Nah. Maybe, but no.
Maybe.
Depends. The answer in short is really hard.
Yeah.
He's not a must-have.
Yeah. Rich? Joe?
The other one. Arsenal and City, the priorities. Spurs are in the next tier. So that's your priorities, should be Arsenal and City. And Kane probably won't fit into that finance-wise.
Michael Brooker, we got all the celebrities in tonight. Michael Brooker says, do I play Justin or Botman this week? What do you think, Joe?
Oh, remind me of the fixtures they play.
Botman have United away and Leicester have Leeds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Play Justin then. That's the probably more likely to get a clean sheet. You would hope.
Ben Allum said, "Oh, did I ask you that one, Rich?"
No, it's like the Ward Pope thing. It's basically Ward and Pope. I would play Justin, and I love Botman, but it's close. That's a 50-50, like my keepers.
Yeah. Actually, think about it. I'm playing Pope over Ward, so maybe I should just not have said what I said.
Ben Allum asks, "Do I sell Trent?" Rich?
Yes, he's injured. If he's injured.
If he's injured.
Sounds
Joe?
like he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's better.
Yeah. And last one from Colm Bugler says, fish finger sandwich, do you have it with brown sauce or tomato sauce, Joe?
Oh, mayonnaise and tomato sauce. White bread. Has to be white bread, though.
Cool, sacrilege.
White bread, mayonnaise, ketchup.
I have ketchup with most dinners, so ketchup.
With most dinners.
In porridge.
Same with me. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just going to sneak in a cheeky little one because it's just for Joe, and it's from FPL Spartans. And he says, cheeky Sky FF question. Who's the best captain for Friday? McAllister, Trossard, Dunk, Webster, or Tony?
I think it's between McAllister and Dunk, depending on how your team is set up. I'm personally going to go with Dunk. But if you've got to free up a midfield slot, I would go for McAllister's on penalties. And both of them will get the tiers in that game in terms of not the tears you're crying, tears as in passing and tackling. You'll get some extra points there. So I think those two. Trossard, if you're a bit maverick and you want to rely on those attacking returns. I think reliability, Dunk or McAllister.
Lovely stuff. Right, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for everybody that's joined us in the chat. We peaked at about 600 listeners there, which was great. And thank you so much if you've been listening on the pod as well. We really appreciate everybody watching and listening every single week. Game week 11 is obviously nearly here. I say nearly here; it's got a couple of days yet. So even more injuries, I'm sure, will be coming up, and Rich will be crying more and more as the week goes on. Rich, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, no, thank you. I swear, because obviously Joe's on next week and me and you aren't, I bet you I have a good week this week. Yeah. And we don't get to be on Scoutcast, then I come back to a red arrow.
It always happens, mate. Literally, it always happens. Joe, hope you enjoyed your evening as well.
I did indeed. And just a final reminder, captaincy video next Monday, lunchtime, 1:00, and we'll be discussing in more detail some of the things we're discussing here about the Game Week 12 captain. It's not Haaland. And also, Tuesday, 5:30, that's the deadline Scoutcast with Karen.
Lovely stuff. And obviously, it's going to be a bye from me as well. Make sure you like the stream. Over 600 people watching, and we haven't even reached 100 likes yet. Come on, get us to at least 100 likes. Just 4 more of you. Thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I hope all your arrows are green. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.